Well, we've had news headlines come through where the Department of Energy is reviewing the mechanism that sets fuel prices in the country. First of all, before we leap forward here, what mechanism is currently being used at the moment?
I think it's important to note that the fuel price structure consists of two elements. The one is an international element and the other one is a domestic element. The announcement was that they're going to look at the BFP, the basic fuel price, and those are all the elements influenced by international issues. So basically it will look at a study of the elements where they use two spot prices, the Singapore price and the Mediterranean Gulf price. Those two are added together, divided by 50. Then they'll have a look at all the costs associated with wharfage, insurance, all those elements that play a role in getting the fuel or the crude to Durban and to the coastal elements.
One's got a question, though, how much control Department of Energy actually has on factors like these, because these are relevant factors and, as you say, that are set internationally.
Correct. I think if you have a look and you break down each one of those issues, for instance, the insurance costs, so there are formulas that make up those costs in each one of those elements. So I presume that the investigation or the study would include having a look at those formulas. Are they still relevant? Do they need to be lowered? Do they need to be increased? Whatever the case may be. And I think it's important to note that the review of that structure may not necessarily be a cheaper price.
Exactly, because when we hear or when you initially read these headlines that come through, you get the impression that it's coming on the back of the price increases that we're seeing and the department getting worried about what this could trigger potentially down the line from a social perspective. But that's not necessarily the case and important to be highlighted.
Correct, correct, absolutely. I mean, we're out there dependent on the international crude prices, like everybody else in the world, and that's the biggest uncontrollable that you have.
Very difficult at this stage of the game to assess the kind of impact this revision is going to have on fuel prices moving forward. You know, from your perspective, have you put any forecasts out there in terms of a possible set impact?
No, not at all. I think it's only a clever person that can do that, and I don't think I'm that clever.
Or someone who has a crystal ball, I guess. So let's take a look at just what kind of a review process we're looking at here, because it's not just the Department of Energy reviewing the mechanism solely. There's also going to be a lot of public consultation. So what kind of process are we looking at here?
I think the starting point is that the department needs to determine a terms of reference. Once they've completed and accepted the terms of reference, they would obviously put it out to tender and have an independent consultancy company do the review. And I think the important thing here is that South Africans need to understand that the department has always been very transparent in all these issues. It's available on the department's website. Anybody has access to exactly what controls and what affects the fuel price.
Very transparent. What about quick to the draw? Because this is a mechanism that's been in place, the one currently at play, since 2003. Do we need to start looking at these mechanisms more regularly?
I would accept that one needs to always review that quite regularly. But just bear in mind that the basic fuel price element that we're looking at now and talking about is only one element in the rest. The domestic influences is everything beyond the refinery gate. The BFP is up to the refinery gate, then everything beyond the refinery gate. And then you start looking at where the controls and regulations from the department come in play. That is the pipeline. Transnet controls the pipeline. NERSA determines those tariff increases. Then you have a look at the wholesale margin, the retailer's margin, the transport costs, and all those elements. And then, of course, the biggest part of the domestic influence is fuel taxes and levies. So
having said that, do you find it interesting that it's the international elements that are actually, or international factors at play, that are being reviewed more so than the domestic factors that are contributing?
Absolutely. But I think at least the basic fuel price is going to be under review. It hasn't been for a long time. And I think everybody needs to know, including the department, oil companies, everybody need to know what is the actual number. And in that review process, maybe it may be ascertained that some of the formulas in each of those elements is not 100% correct, and it needs to be reviewed and adjusted.
Simultaneously, we've got the department embarking on this endeavour where we're looking at employing or producing cleaner fuels down the road. Just how much a trickier situation does this become? Because one can assume that producing cleaner, efficient fuel is going to be more expensive and so difficult to rein in costs.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, if you just bear thought for the refiners, they have to upgrade their refineries to be able to produce clean fuels, and the clean fuels will be produced based on a spec. And the spec is what goes into those clean fuels. They then need to tweak and adjust their refinery accordingly. Those costs is probably between 30 and 40 billion rand. So the question is, who pays for that? Do you expect the refiner to pay that, or is the cost going to be trickled down to the motorist at the end of the day?
Where that question's asked, I mean, where does your point stand at the moment? Which side of the fence do you sit on?
A difficult one, because I have a relationship with oil companies, and I also obviously represent retailers. So, and I'm a consumer myself. So I certainly wouldn't want to pay for it. But I think it's an inevitable issue that at the end of the day, we want a cleaner environment, we want lower carbons, we want this whole green issue to be realistic and real. And I think at the end of the day, if that's what we want, we're going to have to pay for it.